You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
Hello and welcome to the 602 Club, Trek FM's local watering hole, and I am just one of the hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as she is always, Christy Morris.
Balboa.
I didn't know that was your last name. Your last name's Balboa?
Yeah, I don't know if you knew, but Rocky's my brother, and we trained together.
Okay. I mean, I see the guns. I get it. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Man, I wish everybody could see the guns right now. Whew. It is a show. Oh man. Well, this is going to be fun. Talking about the original Rocky movie together today.
Yeah, I actually haven't rewatched it in a while, and it was nice to get to come back to it. It's kind of an old favorite, and I'm sure for a lot of people. But yeah, I'm really excited and interested to see how our opinions match up.
Yeah, I think so too. So, and yeah, it'll be interesting too, just to kind of see, where we both, not only land with the movie, just like, this is one of those movies too, since it came out before both of us was born, like how we found it and all that stuff, which I always enjoy kind of hearing about. But before we forget, we just want to thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We always have so much fun getting to interact with everybody on social media. Like we've got at Trek FM. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Trek FM. Of course, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. So just make sure you're subscribed, and that way you'll get the podcast as soon as it drops. And then you can also give us a star rating review on Apple Podcasts, which really does help the show grow when you do that. So we really appreciate that. And then we've got our listeners-only discussion group on Facebook. It's called the Babel Conference. You can find that, be let into the group, and you can talk to listeners from all over the world about the different shows we have here on the network. And then at trek.fm, which is our website, you can find our contact section, and there you can send Christy and I an email. So maybe you could tell us your story about finding Rocky, or maybe the first time you saw it in the theater or something like that. But, Christy, that leads me to the question of kind of like what your first bout in the ring was with Rocky. Like, when did you first see this movie?
It was another, I feel like I say this all the time, but it was another film that I grew up watching with my dad. He showed me the original Rocky movie and First Blood when I was probably like 10 years old. Again, great parenting choices. I would say those are good, wholesome kids movies, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, I don't know. I guess I was always comfortable with that kind of thing. It didn't like give me nightmares or anything like that. So that's something that we really enjoyed rewatching often together, along with like Predator and Aliens and all of the sci-fi stuff too. So, yeah, that's how I got into it. What about you?
Yeah. This is one of those movies that, It came out about 4 years before I was born, so it's definitely one, I was not going to be able to have seen in the theater, but it also became one of those movies that I have honestly just missed, throughout my life, and I haven't seen the original, but I had seen, which is strange, I'd seen Rocky Balboa, which is, I think, the last film in this series for him, where he's just, it's just about Rocky. And then I had also seen, I've seen the first Creed movie, which I really enjoyed as well. But I've just, for some reason, never seen Rocky, which I know is weird. But I do have to say, it was really, I had a great time, watching it the other night with my wife, and enjoyed the experience so much that we just rolled right into Rocky 2. So,
nice.
So that was really fun. That was my first time to be able to see the film, and so, but yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's just always interesting how we find these movies, whether it was, somebody from our family something we grew up with, or, was it just one of those things where you just kind of end up missing it? And, friend Sean has that show Missing Frames, where it's like, movies you should have seen, but you haven't. And this was just one of those that I definitely should have already seen. I just hadn't yet. And so it was great to be able to finally, fill that gap. And I will say too, and I maybe I'll spoil it a little bit here, but it was definitely worth filling as a gap. Like I'm very happy that I finally saw this movie.
Well, and I think too, just to have that basis for understanding all the rest of the films.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide now you want to go watch through all, I think there's 8 total if you count Creed. Then you could do that and you understand where it all started. But yeah, I mean, and there's always movies like that for whatever reason we've missed in our lives and you've always heard about, though. Like, I feel like Rocky is pretty embedded in popular culture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's so many references to it, whether it's iconic scenes from the movie, yelling out Adrian at people,
mm-hmm.
or, joking about drinking a cup full of raw eggs.
Yeah, which... disgusting. Like, I don't know why anybody would do that. It's so gross.
But quick protein at 4 a.m.
Apparently, or salmonella,
like you do.
So you just never know.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. It absolutely is one of those movies where I think it's good if you just kind of want to have a cinema education, is to have seen this, because there are so many references to it in other places. I mean, even silly enough, you've got in Spaceballs, where they're like, and next a review of Rocky 5000, so it's definitely something that has become humorous in some ways, but it's also been something that, has meant something to a lot of people, and people love these movies. So, yeah. And what was interesting for me is because, I'd never really seen it, hadn't done a lot of reading on it, was just kind of reading about the inspirations that Sylvester Stallone had for this, and that it legitimately was something that he wrote 3.5 days. And very shortly after watching Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner, who went 15 rounds before Wepner was TKO'd. And so,
which is insane.
Yeah, which is crazy. Like, I can't imagine just even watching this movie, the pummeling that he takes, and like, how do you even stand up? Like, I don't, I just don't get it. But, and also too, the fact that there may have been some inspiration from other real life boxers, like, Rocky Marciano, and Joe Frazier. I love that Rocky poster is actually on his wall in the movie. So, really neat to me to see that this is something that obviously meant a lot to Stallone. I mean, to be able to produce the screenplay in 3.5 days is pretty crazy. That doesn't happen a lot in Hollywood, really.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because, too, if you think about, they generally say a screenplay is 1 page per minute.
Yes.
And so, and to do that in 3 days, starting from nothing, is really insane. And, bravo for his hard work.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, too, it's a really nice underdog story. And I feel like that's where he probably got a lot of inspiration as well, about just, the work that these people put in to become an excellent boxer, and the stress that it puts on your body, and explaining boxing terms. Like, I didn't know what southpaw meant before this movie, and then even rewatching it again, I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I didn't know what that meant either. Even though there was that movie a few years back called Southpaw. Yeah, exactly. But I had no idea what it meant. And I didn't grow up in a family that really watched boxing or anything like that, so it wasn't something that I've grown up being familiar with as the sport and everything. But I think this movie definitely kind of gave me a whole new appreciation for kind of what it can be like, and just in general, I think the thing that I was impressed with learning this is that this really is a singular work, you know, that it's something that Sylvester Stallone had really poured himself into. You know, when you write a screenplay in 3.5 days, it's something that you really care about. And I thought it was interesting that the Studio United artist, they liked the script, but they wanted to use like a more well-established actor, like a Robert Redford or Burt Reynolds or James Caan. And he basically gave him an ultimatum, like, if I'm not in this movie, I walk with the script. And I think, you know, he made the right choice for sure. Because I mean, as great as those guys are, Sylvester Stallone is Rocky.
Yeah, and I think too, if you think about any of these other people possibly in that role, not that they wouldn't have done a good job, but I've always felt that Robert Redford at least is more of the pensive, strong, quiet type, maybe as a person, but then also as an actor. That's like the roles I've seen him in the most. And so I feel like this role, you really needed somebody that not only was going to be more outgoing, I guess, in general, but also was going to be a fresh face to put for this character. I don't know. I feel like for this to really be successful, it needed somebody like Sylvester Stallone, who at the time didn't have a big movie career yet. This was what solidified his career and took off afterward.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm with you on that because, you know, those other guys are great, but I just don't see them as being the people who could pull off the role in the way that it seems to be written. You know, I mean, it really does seem to be written with Stallone in mind, and just the characterization that he gives the character himself. You know, all of those guys don't feel like they would be able to play the person that kind of, I mean, like, has this almost childlike nature to him. You know, he's in this really mean world, and yet there's still such an almost like a childlike hope to him, and just a childlike nature of inquisitiveness, and I hate, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all, but there's a simplicity to him as a person, you know, and I don't know if any of the other guys would have been able to play that the way that Sylvester Stallone does, and just make it as believable. I mean, maybe they could have, and I'm just taking something away from it, but you know, I think this is one of those places where it's just like, no, it needed to be Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I did actually write in my notes that I wanted to make sure I mentioned, I love the way that Stallone plays the character, as, you know, like he's wrote him and played him as he's just a really good person who has a very strong sense of right and wrong. And although he tells Adrian, like, I'm kind of dumb, he is just like being honest and saying, my dad told me I didn't have much for brains, so I needed to use my body in life. And so that's what I figured out I was best at. And so he just takes that and runs with it. And I think that he really gets across in the scenes, like with the girl on the street corner that he takes under his wing and walks home and is telling her about how to be a good person and not have a bad reputation. And to get places in life, you need to hang out with the right people. It just really shows what kind of person Rocky is. Yeah, no, I'm really glad you said that, because I think that's the thing that I was keying into at this whole movie, is that what really makes this movie work is the character of Rocky and the way that Sylvester Stallone plays him. And he's just the heart of the film. You know, he truly is just the heart of the movie. And like I was, you know, he's got that childlike innocence, even though he does understand how the world works. Like you were saying, like he clearly gets the way the world operates, especially like when he's talking to, you know, he works for a lone guy who's basically the loan shark.
Yeah, low level mobster basically. And so, you know, he knows how the world works. You know, he's seen what the world has done to his friends too, like, you know, his friend Paulie, who's just, you know, scraping by and you know, wants a better job with the loan shark basically and all that. And Rocky's like, doesn't really want his friend involved in that, you know, like you said, the girl on the street, you know, where he's trying to get her to understand what life is like on the street and like the reason like you don't want to be like that. And again, I just think all of these things that he's doing, there's such an honesty and a believability with this that just bring it all home to me. And I thought that it was just really interesting because again, he truly is the heart of the film. Like he is the center to which everything else of this movie really is based, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense for why he was fighting to play the role. So
yeah, it's really nice to see that, especially that he ended up playing the character when you see the scenes like that. And then also like you can tell that he plays Rocky as somebody who is another guy from a small neighborhood and he kind of knows everybody and he has his regular places that he goes. And it's nice because you as an audience are really like seeing life through his eyes, especially when he goes to the final fight, because right before he's telling Adrian, I just want to be known as the guy who went the distance. And I wasn't just a guy from some neighborhood in Philly. Like I made something of myself, or at least I gave every possible part of me to do that.
Yes. Yeah. And not only that, you know, because, and I think just right along with that is that, you know, Rocky is a person, you know, before he's called out for his fight with Creed, you know, to be the person that Creed will battle in the ring, you know, like everybody just kind of seems to be using Rocky, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, Paulie's trying to use him to get a better job, you know, his loan shark boss is using him to be muscle. You know, everybody just kind of seems to be, and even then, as we progress to, you know, Rocky getting the invitation for the fight, like people are just using him again in many ways. Like Mickey is kind of using him to kind of get back into the limelight in some ways. You know, again, Paulie's just trying to use him. Creed is just using him. Like he's a guy who's just constantly being used by people for their own benefit. And like, in many ways, I think that's one of the reasons why Rocky is attracted to Adrian, because she's not somebody who's trying to use him at all. In fact, she's somebody who's, you know, disinclined to associate with anybody, you know, because she's so shy. And I think that's one of the things that makes her so attractive to him is that, you know, he doesn't feel like she's going to try to use him in any way. And so that was just something that was really interesting to watch play out throughout the movie. And it was kind of sad, right? Like it makes sense why Rocky's goal then is to be somebody who's seen as being able to go to the distance, you know, to basically be somebody who means something beyond being used by somebody else. Like he wants to be somebody who can do this, because then it proves his worth. And like, it really shows, like in this movie, it wasn't something I put on the outline, but it was just something I was thinking of as we're talking, like how important it is for us to have worth and feel like we're worth something to people, you know? And when we don't feel that, we tend to not live our best lives. And so having a purpose and feeling useful to others in a way that doesn't just leave us feeling like they're using us for their own benefit, it's just something I think plays out as an undertone throughout this entire movie.
I love that you brought that up, not only the piece about worth, but also especially about everyone using him, because I think that there's two big moments in the movie where you see that more than anything. And one of them is when he finally blows up at Mickey, even though Mickey's left the room and he's going down the stairs. Rocky is just letting it out loud, how he's so tired of being treated like that, and that he's saying, where were you when I was in my prime? Like, you got to have a prime at least. And now, years later, you're finally wanting to get involved with me, but it's just because I'm going to be on a TV fight. Like, if it was any other regular fight, you don't care about me. But he finally, decides to go and allow him to coach him anyway. And then I love the part where they're actually in the final fight, and the coach for Creed says he doesn't realize this is a joke. I think that's what he said. He either said he doesn't realize, he thinks this is a real fight or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it's like they're suddenly realizing, oh, he came to play ball.
Yeah, boy plays. He plays for keeps. He's not in the ring to just dance around and get his face beaten in. No, absolutely. No, I really liked that you pointed out that moment with Mickey, because earlier he says they have that conversation at the gym, and he's like, "Why did you give up on me?" Basically, and he's like, "Oh, because you went to work for that guy." And it's like, if you truly believe that he could be somebody, then like make him be somebody, right? Spend the time with him, and so it's like, yeah, absolutely. It also shows the importance, I think, of just the need for others in our lives. Like, we can't do it on our own, and obviously this isn't a fight that Rocky could even possibly get close to winning on his own. He did need others, and I think that kind of shows, even just the way this movie looks and where it's shot and everything, and we're kind of seeing 1970s, East Philadelphia. It's not great, the big cities, the East did not look good in the 70s. And so I think, even the production speaks to the way in which it's a hard time. It's a hard time for jobs. There's just kind of urban decay everywhere, and it really makes the movie feel raw and real because of the way they shot it. You're really in this place, and you're kind of feeling the way in which all of these people's lives are just kind of having the joy sucked out of them because they just don't have anywhere to move. They don't have anywhere to go. And the production, I think, really helps speak to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that you really see that in the way that they did set design, the costuming, and even showing, where Rocky lives versus where like Paulie and his sister live. Their house is at least a little bit nicer, it seems, and maybe they have like some family heirloom furniture and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's like pretty much everybody here is scraping by, like you said, and they're doing okay, but they're definitely not where they'd like to be. And so it's really also another way that you're rooting for Rocky for this fight, because you're like, he's at least going to get a good pay cut for that, for just showing up and fighting. And then maybe he'll be able to do some things for improving his own life and moving on from there, and maybe continuing to do big fights and stuff. And like, just the whole thing sets him up to succeed with that in his life where he couldn't before.
Yeah, I really like that. You just pointing out just the way the set design and how, such a shamble that Rocky lives in. And yeah that difference even.
Like, his couch is covered in beer bottles.
Well, and he doesn't do anything for himself to keep it clean, it doesn't look like. In that true. Way, he's definitely kind of a bum. But, I think all of that just really works in the film. And it's one of the things I think that makes it really special is, sometimes it's not great to have a movie that's so tied to its time period. But here it's so important because it's such a part of the milieu that we're in, and so the production really speaking to the fact that we're stuck in the late 70s and things aren't great in inner city Philadelphia helps. It helps sell the story of this kind of down and out fighter, and it really brings the movie to life. And just the rawness of the way they even shoot the movie makes a big difference too, with the lighting and just like everything either feels harsh or kind of darker, or like nothing feels really comfortable here, which is perfect. You know, it's just exactly the way it needs to feel. So, we've got the rest of the cast for the movie, and I thought it was really interesting that Talia Shire plays Adrian, because right before I'd seen this, the weekend before, I had some friends over, couple people, not a lot, so don't get on me, but we watched The Godfather, and they had never seen it. And
I've never seen it.
Yeah, she plays Connie, which is the Corleone sister. And so it was really interesting to see her in this role, because in that role, she's just super vibrant. She's this yelling Italian woman, with a hot temper and everything. And here she's just completely different. And I thought she played the role so well of somebody who's just, she's almost kind of scared of people in some way. And yet Rocky is able to kind of draw her out of her shell in the best way. And I really liked the story that they tell with these two people who really are good for each other, because they kind of help fill some of the gaps that the other has. And I think he even says that, we fill each other's gaps, and I think that's really important to be able to realize, to see where you're deficient and where that other person helps make you a better version of you.
I think that them together was the sweet, positive light of this movie, because you see that her brother, Paulie, is even maybe a little abusive, at least verbally, all the time. Yep. And then the final fight that the two of them get into, and he's still acting like everyone owes him something. And she finally says, I do everything for you. I owe you nothing. And it's like her finally being free of that weight. And then asking Rocky if he wants a roommate, I think for her as a character was the best decision, because clearly Paulie needs to figure himself out, and it was not doing her any favors. And I wonder if it was the cause of her being so terribly shy and uncomfortable around people.
I think that's a great pull. I mean, absolutely. Because
that would scar you and make you think, okay, well, I just can't trust anyone to treat me right, so I'm not going to talk to anyone.
Well, and it would definitely hurt your self-esteem, like I'm not good enough, all of those kind of things.
Right.
Absolutely, that would hurt her in that way. And I think one of the things that's really interesting is when you have her and then her brother Paulie, I think one of the things that they do there in the story is they show the reason why both of these characters are the way they are. Paulie's in this dead-end job. He has nowhere to go. He does no prospects, and he takes that anger out in the wrong place, and he takes it out on his sister. And I'm not saying it's right. It's just what happens, and so, I mean, even where we are right now as we're going through this COVID pandemic thing, like, everybody's on edge. Like, people are much more willing to kind of blow up at people that they wouldn't normally, just because of the stress that we feel that we're under all the time. And so, you have a sense of what this guy's life is like. And, honestly, you see why he keeps asking, for the opportunity to make more money. Because he's not going to be able to make any more money where he is, and he doesn't have the ability to really move up in that company. And so it's just a sad state of the world that's turning him into somebody that would be verbally abusive to his sister and to take his anger out on her. And it's not just the situation's fault, because he's obviously choosing to do that. But it is part of it. In the same way that, just the experience then of what she's lived in has caused her to be what she's being, and how she acts, which is to be somebody who's kind of removed herself from society in all ways. She's very quiet, and so those two together, I thought, were really good in the movie, and they, again, both of those characters kind of help show the way in which the reality of, the late 70s was playing out in people's lives. And when you feel hopeless, there isn't a lot of places to go. And in many ways, Rocky becomes the character who helps give both of them hope in different areas of their life, and it makes sense to why Rocky then is this character that so many people kind of latch on to, because he is the quintessential American dream, like that you can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and get out of your situation by whatever talents God has given you, right? And so we see Rocky as being a beacon of hope to people who have none.
And I did want to say too, I feel like the moment when he and Adrian finally kiss is so sweet, because it goes back to what you were saying about the self-worth. Like, she's finally being shown by somebody that, she thought he was joking at first when he said that she was beautiful. And that was so sad. I mean, it really hits you in that moment that she's like, don't mess with me. Don't joke with me. And he's like, I'm not. And then she just crumples because she finally understands that he really means it. That somebody is saying, I really do care about you. I just thought that it was such an emotional, sweet moment. And moments like that too throughout the movie made me notice, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but there's not a lot of music in this movie.
Yeah, there isn't. I think, the music in the movie, Bill Conti does a great job with what he gives us because it's so iconic. But a lot of this movie just gets to play out with the scenes, with the characters. And, there's some diegetic music with people singing on the street corners and stuff like that. But I think it really works to kind of sell the bleakness almost of the situation that the people are in. And then the points when you have music, you have this kind of triumphal. I mean, the movie starts with that anthem, that Rocky anthem, and it lets you know that as bleak as the movie's going to get, there is still going to be this hope. And I think he does that's the genius of what Conti does with the music, I think, is that he lets you know that this is, it's going to end in a way that's going to leave you hopeful. Even though Rocky doesn't win the fight too, right? Rocky doesn't win the fight, but that's not what mattered. Rocky is able to, because he goes the distance, I feel like we're going to start singing the
I Can Go the Distance from Hercules.
The distance from Hercules, yeah. But yeah, that's exactly basically that hope of Hercules from that movie is the same hope that Rocky has. He just wants to be somebody who proves that he has worth, he has value, and he can go the distance. And the music, I think, really helps sell that, even when there isn't music, because it's telling you something. So
right, holding off until the right moment, and then it's the use of the triumphant anthem.
Yes,
him running up the steps and holding both hands up in the air. I mean, everybody now loves that song and that scene, and I feel like I need to go to those steps just to do that.
Yeah. Well, we can go visit Aaron Goins and then, drive to Philadelphia. So, it's funny because I've obviously seen Carl Weathers now in The Mandalorian, and I feel like I've seen him in some other things. We saw him in Predator. He was great in that. But, he really is so good as this just bombastic, larger-than-life Apollo Creed. And, I think my favorite moment with him was the moment where they're in the hospital and he's laying in the bed, and Rocky comes and asks him whether he gave him his best. And he's like, yeah. And it's just such a painful moment for him because, Apollo doesn't want to have to admit that he gave Rocky his best, and he almost got bested. So I think that was something that I just really appreciated. And, Carl Weathers did a great job of playing both sides of this character, the one who is just so full of himself, and at the same time, the guy who's actually really kind of insecure, he has to stay at the top for people to want to like him, right? At least that's how he feels. So, I thought he did a great job. It's iconic for a reason. His portrayal of this character and the character himself is iconic for a reason.
Yeah, I think even having just that name, Apollo Creed, you've got to have somebody with that level of personality and presence to play that kind of role. And Carl Weathers totally brings it. And I have to say, too, looks like he was in the best shape of his life in this movie. And still, the two of them going in the final fight was so riveting. And it was awesome to see in that moment, too, like we were saying earlier, him as a character, Apollo is feeling like, oh, we're just going to step in the ring. I'm going to knock him out pretty quick and then we'll be done. I won't have to try very hard and I'll still be on top and still have my value. And he realizes that that's not why Rocky came there and that he's got to give his all as well. And I love that at the end, finally, even though Rocky doesn't win, he got close and the two of them are hugging and he says, there's not going to be a rematch. And Rocky says, I don't want one. And it was just, oh, it's so good. Like the two of them.
And then Rocky 2 happens.
But, like it's just like they were evenly matched and they could say at the end of it, we both gave absolutely everything to this fight. And there's no shame in that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're 100% right. And I think that's what makes, and we'll have to talk about it sometime, but that's what makes 2 really interesting. So, because this ends in that way and it's such a great end. But yeah, then we see it doesn't stay that way. So, yeah, but Carl Weathers is great. And like you said, having a name Apollo Creed, you need somebody who feels larger than life and portrays the character as larger than life. And that was perfect. So, Burgess Meredith, though, playing Mickey, he's been kind of like that character has been done by so many people in so many places, kind of pretending to be him. But just having the original person doing the original character was so great to see. I like that there is more to the character than, just being the trainer. He has his own story. He has a reason for the things that he does. And he's also kind of a character he's just trying to make it at this point, and it would be great if he could find somebody who's going to make it in the boxing world that could help him out in some way too. And I really gravitated towards just watching this person struggle with that, and his not helping Rocky earlier in the movie. It does sort of make sense because in many ways, like, if a person isn't willing to like give it their all, like he doesn't have time to deal with people who aren't willing to do that, right? With what he's trying to do in the life he's trying to make for himself, and so I just like that there is a great reasoning for the reality of who these characters are, that feels so grounded and real, and the movie is just so gritty in its characterization of all of the characters. And so and we really see that with, Mickey is as gritty as it gets.
Oh yeah. And I like that it's not so cut and dry with Mickey. Like, you want to not like him because you do feel in that moment when they're arguing that Mickey is just now trying to get in on the game because he wants to use Rocky and he wants to get in on the money or something or the fame that, oh, I coached him. But then you kind of see a different side to it and feel some for Mickey when he kind of is starting to leave and feeling like, okay, it's not going to happen. And he says, I'm 76 years old. And he looks really let down. And I felt in that moment, oh, maybe it's not so much that he just wants to use Rocky. It was that he was seeing, this is a way I could finally make a difference in a kid's life in a major way.
Yes. And he knows that he can give Rocky something to give him a fighting chance.
Yeah.
Right?
Like he's saying, I didn't have a trainer. and you really need somebody to tell you like the right exercises to do, how often to do them, what to eat, how to do everything to prepare properly for this fight, because I couldn't do it alone.
Right, absolutely. And he's the one who helps Rocky come up with the plan and train for the plan, which is to start using his right fist as the lead fist, and not be the southpaw for most of the fight. And until the end, when Rocky just kind of unleashes and he it's basically, I am not left-handed, but it's more I am not right-handed from the Princess Bride thing. And that's exactly, but he's the one who helps Rocky see that and then help him train so that he can actually do that. And it gives Rocky a fighting chance. And I think, that's the beauty of the character. Like, there's a lot of nuance in these characters, and it seems strange to say that for a script, that's written in 3.5 days, but there is a lot going on. And I think, Sylvester Stallone really just showed, his ability to bring out the emotion in this story and really make you care. And everything about this movie, I think everything about this movie pretty much works for that reason. Like they just found the right way to shoot it, the right way to edit it, the right type of music to insert, the right type of emotion at the right time, right casting. Like, honestly, this movie is one of those where it's just like, I get why, now that this is a movie that everybody holds in such high regard.
Right. Yeah. It's really got very few drawbacks, if any. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head as well right there, because when I think about it now, I'm like, it's very tight in a good way. Like, it just keeps to a certain number of cast members. It doesn't try to go too grandiose with anything. And I think that makes it a good, strong story that you can easily follow. And it's not trying to be anything that it shouldn't be.
Absolutely. And that's something that, obviously many movies, and when they get through to their sequels and stuff, that they find that they can't do, or they try to add too much, and I think in this movie, it really has found its way. So, I guess that's probably a time for us to maybe talk about what we might rate Rocky.
So, I don't know. I feel like it's pretty clear how well we're going to rate it, but I do want to give it I'll do out of 5 and say a 4.5 out of 5 bull mastiffs.
Nice.
Because I thought that
nice.
The dog was a cute touch.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, there was the only thing I think was a little bit of a drawback was that at times you feel like Adrian's character could have had some more dialogue. I think in the beginning it's just a little too uncomfortable with her in the pet store kind of ignoring him all the time. But that's very, very tiny drawback. The rest of the movie I think is just perfect. So
yeah, that's it is really interesting to me because my wife and I were talking about this a little bit, and it's a strange movie because Rocky himself is a very strange character. He just has a very interesting and he's just an interesting person, right? He's not completely likable, and he's not unlikable, and he kind of has a weird personality, but by the time the movie ends, you really like this character, and you like what he stands for and who he is. And to me, everything else about this movie, as we're talking about it, like, the more we talked about it, the more I realized that, to me, this is a 5-star movie. Because everything it's trying to do just works. And everything about the way, like I was saying earlier, just like everything the way it was done works. And that's impressive. And a lot of times, with these older movies, less is more. And I think the fact that they had a very small budget and everything just worked perfectly for the story. And the actors were perfectly cast. And there isn't really anything about the movie I think that I would change. Yeah, which is fantastic. So, yeah, I love when I get to go to these type of movies, that I haven't seen, and it doesn't turn out to be like a Ghostbusters 2 situation,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Well, and like now you can watch this every time before you go for a run and get pumped.
Exactly.
And then, go out and go the distance.
Well, and now, see, I've just got to get to Rocky 3 so I can finally hear the Eye of the Tiger play in the movie. So,
yeah.
But no, I will definitely be continuing. We watched 2, and I'll be watching, my wife and I will continue to watch them all. So I can say I've seen the Rocky series.
Yay.
But, Christy, I think it's time, as we always get to this part of the show, for our recommendations.
And I do have a good one. I'm really excited because I'm not usually a huge documentary person, but I've gotten more into checking some out recently. I've just been in the mood for some off the beaten path stuff. And on Disney Plus, they've got some really cool stuff. And one of them I've started watching is the Secrets of the Zoo series. They have one on the Tampa Zoo and one on the Columbus Zoo in Ohio. And it's fascinating because you learn so much about not only maybe species you had never heard of before, like the binturong. Who knew those existed? It looks like a mix between a porcupine and a cat, and they smell like popcorn.
Weird.
I know, weirdest thing ever. But you also learn that their primary goal really is conservation and repopulating the earth with these endangered species. So it's kind of funny because most of their job apparently is trying to make animals mate in captivity, which is hilarious.
There you go. That does sound
so
pretty
I
interesting.
highly recommend it.
No,
yeah,
it's funny.
Disney Plus.
You mentioned that because I've been doing the same thing with some of the Disney Plus stuff. I've been watching some of their National Geographic shows like Lost Cities and stuff, so that's been really cool. But my recommendation is this. As we're recording today, this very fateful day, the Snyder Cut is going to be released next year on HBO Max. They are going to release Zack Snyder's version, finally, of Justice League, which I could not be more excited. So I'm recommending that people just go back and watch Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, to get ready. Because it is going to be awesome. And I could not have been more excited today when that was announced. And also, I'd recommend watching the movies with the commentaries that Zack Snyder did on Vero. You can find those on the YouTube channel for Vero. Both commentaries, the Man of Steel and Batman v Superman one, both are. I've not gotten a chance to watch the Man of Steel one. It happened as we're recording today, but it was in the morning, and I was at work. But I do know that like Henry Cavill showed up on it, which was great, and they had some fans get to ask some questions too. So, definitely worth checking out. I always enjoy hearing these type of things. So, yeah, I'm just really excited, and I can't wait to have a chance to talk about that next year when it comes out on HBO Max. So, but Christy, if anybody wants to catch up with you and just see what's going on out there, what you're doing, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok now at Bespin Bell. And I also do a couple of other shows. When Matt and I aren't doing 602 Club, I appear on a show with my friend Teresa called Sabers and Spells. And we actually have a big announcement coming up on our next episode, so you'll want to make sure that you listen to that one, as well as covering some new content. So, yeah. If you like Harry Potter, Star Wars, anything geeky at all, we'll be covering stuff like that. But then I also do a show called Planet Leia on the Fantatrax Network. We're finally getting back to recording some more this month. And I do a segment once a month on the Star Wars Report called Fashion in 5 about men's and women's Star Wars fashion.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Vero under the name MattRushing02. I am here on the network doing The Orb with Chris Jones. When we get a chance, we talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. 2 shows over there on the Nerd Party Network. One is called Owlpost, doing that with Drea Kaufman, and we are finally starting the Deathly Hallows. We are on the last book of the Harry Potter series, so I am really excited about that. I know it's crazy. It's been a long journey, and, we still have, I think there are 30 chapters in that book, so it's 31, I think, with the epilogue. So we still got a while, but it's been a blast. So I'm really excited to finally get to this last book. And then doing Aggressive Negotiations with John Mills, where we are talking about Star Wars every week. I love sitting down with him, and we just talk about a Star Wars topic that we've been thinking about, or, something that we've been inspired by with, all the stuff that's going on in Star Wars these days. And then last but not least, we do hope to be back soon with Cinema Stories with my friend Courtney as we talk about films through the lens of faith. But thank you so much for joining us.
And y'all come back now, you hear?